Okay, I'm live, I think. So hello Retro Road Mappers. It's Maud Betty. I think I might be a few minutes early, but the weather is so weird outside. I'm a little bit concerned about us getting like whoosh, knocked all over the place. It's just been crazy. Yeah, but here I am. And just gonna wait for a few people to chime on because I know, chime on. You don't chime on, you tune in. Chiming in is when you talk. Chiming on, I just think I just made that up. And I just noticed I got a goofy thing on my hair right here. Hey people, nice to see everybody. If anybody wants to chime in, Craig, thank you for showing up. Oh my gosh, you've caught me. Oh, you know what? We're gonna. Hey Cliff Hillis, nice to see you. Mary Beth, hello. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure that before I started right into it, that I had a few people chiming in, or tuning in. Gotta get my nomenclature straight. So welcome everybody. So today we are going to talk about, I'm going to be sharing some of my faves and finds from West Virginia. Now normally I have had a little vintage postcard or a sticker or something, or even one of my Shakos, and I don't have that today. So I thought what I might do to kind of introduce the state of West Virginia was to introduce the state of West Virginia.
Almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like the breeze. Country road, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home, country road. Hey! Hey! That's the Love Seed Mama Jump edition there.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you, Retro Road Husband. Yay. So that was just our goofy way of saying, hey, I'm going to talk about West Virginia today. And there happened to be a song that said West Virginia in it. So there we go. So West Virginia, we did regular Virginia, plain Virginia yesterday. And here's the deal. So I did this before and I don't know if it was helpful or not, but I thought I would try it. This is the state of West Virginia. I just printed it out so I would know how to kind of guide you. I don't know if we're going to exactly, like, don't take my my directions as like actual, driving directions. But because the thing is with West Virginia, and especially with the weather the way it is today, I thought of this and I was thinking if for some reason this weather that I have going on today knocks out the power, and I could only tell you here, I'm just going to lower this a little bit. There we go. I was straining my neck, you see. If I only had 3 places to talk to you about in West Virginia, even though I have a lot more of those today, there are 3 things that I'd want you to know in case this suddenly went black during the taping. And the first one would be the Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia. If all of a sudden we lost power and you heard nothing else from me, if I sent you to the Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia, I feel like I would have steered you in the right direction. So I will talk about that a little bit more when we get near Romney. But the other 2 places, they're kind of places, but they're also things in West Virginia that I think are really neat because they are made in West Virginia and they're nationally and internationally known. But they're known to rock the microphone. One of them is, I have a bunch of it in my kitchen, and it is Fiestaware. Fiestaware dishes, brightly colored dishes that are made here in America, started in 1936, made in Newell, West Virginia. Again, if we went out, didn't hear anything more from me, Cool Wink Motel, Fiestaware. Third thing, and then we'll get into more of the, not filling in the blanks, but, giving you some greater detail, is Blanco glassware. Now, Blanco glassware is also made in West Virginia, and I will admit I don't have any of it in my house because I have yet to visit the Blanco glass factory, and I wanted to buy something special when I'm there because I don't need anything. Like nowadays, I've been around long enough that I have enough stuff to drink out of and eat off of and things like that. But if I'm traveling and I want to buy a souvenir, while I do love my tacky tchotchkes that kind of collect dust, I also right now I love to get something that is handy around the house, so that I look at it and say, oh hey, remember when I was in, the Japanese part of Epcot and I bought that little thing that I put my tea bags on? Or remember these glasses that we bought when we were at the Cool Wink? That type of thing. So while I haven't been to the Blanco factory in Milton, West Virginia, it is a place that I'm going to highly recommend because I'm excited to go there too. Another quick aside, if anybody is a vintage and retro collector, there are two different kinds of glass. If you Google Blanco, Blenko, there's Blanco and then there's also Blendo. Now Blendo and Blanco are two different glasswares. Blendo is the kind that has the kind of painted, frosted, almost cloudy look down the bottom, colored, very, very attractive, very mid-century looking. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about Blanco. But in general, we're talking about West Virginia. So let's start. So we're going to basically start. It's an unusually shaped state, don't you think? I don't know what they call it. It's just unusual. We've got Virginia here. We talked about Virginia on Tuesday. Sometime last week we were in Pennsylvania, so we're out here, like right over here. We're in the western part of Pennsylvania here. This is where like Pittsburgh is, just to kind of give this amorphous, colorful shape some context. And then over here is Ohio. So West Virginia is kind of all over the place. And then even down here, we've got Kentucky. So it touches a lot of states. So I'm starting over here. I always like to go, I think it's because I'm from New England, I'm from the East Coast. I always like to start east to west, or maybe it's because I'm left-handed, not sure. But anyhow, we're going to start up here and kind of wind our way up and down and around. We're going to go down here, over here, and then finally end up here, okay? So here we go. Okay, so as I said, the first three places, going to reiterate it for people who tuned in late, totally okay, totally cash. You're not going to get docked if you're not here on time. Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia. I'll get to that in a hot minute. But I wanted to tell you about a couple of places. Marianne, nice to see you chiming in. Thank you. Patterson's Drugstore in Martinsburg, West Virginia, right over here. Adorable little place. I wouldn't just send you to a drugstore that just sold drugs, or maybe I would. But pretty much anytime I'm sending you to a drugstore, it's because it's also a drugstore that has a soda fountain and a lunch counter. Because back in the day, that was a thing that you could do. You could go, because if you think about it, there was very few, I think they called them patent medicines at the time, stuff that we get now from companies, but places you'd go and the druggist would actually mortar and pestle, create what you needed, your tinctures and your powders and things for your headaches and whatnot. But you would also go to the soda fountain and the lunch counter. So I love places like that. As you probably know, you're going to see some recurring themes. And I noticed today, here's a funny thing, for anybody who's been tuning in regularly, I'm always looking for my duck pin bowling pin, because I'm always talking about duck pin bowling. It's literally within an inch of me, yet I don't have any duck pin bowling places to share in West Virginia. If anybody knows of any duck pin bowling places in West Virginia to share, put them in the comments. The other thing I want to remind you of too, speaking of the comments, is this is your opportunity to show off your knowledge of places that you like in West Virginia. I know people have emailed me a few places that I'm excited to share, but if there's any place that you want to make sure people know about while we're watching this today, and especially for the people who can't show up and watch us, it's really windy out. You hear that? Anyhow, wicked windy. Patterson's Drugstore in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Up in this area too, we've got Berkeley Springs. Now, Berkeley Springs is considered America's first spa. And ironically, where I'm from in New England, they used to call the little quarter drugstores that had the soda fountains and things a spa. But what we're talking about here is a place where you could go and it would be like a natural hot spring or a natural spring where this nice, clear, clean water would come, out of the core of the earth and trickle out. And Berkeley Springs is an antique, old-fashioned place that has those springs. Now, of course, sadly, because we're during this coronavirus time, as we all know, and you can tell because my hair grows longer oh crap, now what did I do? Nope, I go like this. Every week, my hair grows a little bit longer. But anyhow, so they're not open now. But if you were to go there again, Berkeley Springs is a place that you can go, and it's a cute little downtown, and they have places to shop and things, but the main draw is the water. Now, you can buy some water there, but you can also go, they have some really kind of luxury type spa places, or they have the Roman baths that you have that are a little bit more old school that you can go and you can soak in the mineral soaked waters there. And I thought this would be kind of funny because while I was investigating Berkeley Springs, I saw this quote that just cracked me up, and it's just so applicable to now, where they were talking about the magic waters of Berkeley Springs. So they said in 1853, Dr. William Burke said, the nervous system generally would be tranquilized. The feeling of wretchedness and fear, of impending evil, would be removed. And the whole man or woman or whomever restored to gaiety and hopefulness. The baths of Berkeley are certainly delightful, calming and tranquilizing to your system, making you pleased with yourself and all around you. Now, seriously, who does not want to be pleased with all that's around you, feeling gay and hopeful, calmed and delightful? So that is Berkeley Springs in West Virginia. Moving right along. Oh, this was a neat place that I didn't know about. I've known about some of these, but doing these videos gives me an opportunity to do a little bit more of a deeper dive into a state. Now, normally what I do when I do my research is I do a couple of things. One is anytime I read about a place that sounds interesting, I have a personal Google map for every state and then some. Private, they're just mine, and it's almost like me keeping notes. It's almost like the olden days where you would cut articles out of the paper and you'd maybe have a file for those things. Well, what I do is if somebody recommends a place to me that sounds interesting, or if I read about it, I will immediately pop a pin into a map. And the reason I do that is because then if we realize we're going to be traveling somewhere, then I can actually, sorry, I'm getting distracted by the wind. I have to press on. I have to put on my blinders. But when I do my research, then I pop open my Google map and I say, oh, check it out. I have all these places. But then when I'm doing things like this, I need to go and do a little bit more of a deeper dive. And that's what I did today. And this is a really cool place that I discovered. It's called the Three Otters Eco Retreat, ECO, like ecological eco retreat maybe. It's in Great Cacapon, West Virginia. Cacapon. In any case, it's up in this nice little area of West Virginia that's kind of surrounded by Maryland. And the reason I am recommending a place that says Eco Retreat is if you like to go camping, like with tents and yurts and things like that, they totally have you covered. But if you like to go camping the Maud Betty way and not stay in a hotel, because that would be my ideal camping, would be to stay in a hotel and not really rough it at all. The Three Otters has a little section where you can rent out a vintage camper, people. You can rent out a vintage camper and you can camp there. Now, I highly recommend this because we own a vintage camper, and while we love it, don't get me wrong, it is always good to do a little bit of a test drive of a lifestyle prior to investing in that lifestyle. You know, it's almost like thinking you want to go somewhere and then you get there and you're like, do I want to live here, or is it just nice to visit? So in any case, if you want to check out the vintage camper lifestyle, that is the Three Otters Eco Retreat. But of course, now we're getting closer here to where I put on my map right here, this really big blob here that really should be like a sign. It should have like an arrow, and it should be a star. And that's because I want to tell you so much. I could probably spend 15 minutes telling you about the Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia. Now, straight up, they're not paying me to rave about them, but this is the great thing. When you do something really good and you just do it because it's what you do, when you get recognized, I mean, it's just kind of a cool thing. So that's what happened to me. Somebody recommended to me years ago the Cool Wink, and we decided to stay there. It is so old school that you have to call to get your reservations. They don't even have online reservations. You call, you actually talk to a person. Most times when I've called, I've talked to Robert Lee, who is the son-in-law of the original owners. It has been a tourist home and tourist area since 1936, and it is now a cute little motel, kind of at the bottom of a hill, closer to the street, but then also up on the hill. This is great mid-century addition there with huge rooms. And here's the deal. The place is family owned and operated. It has been open and continues to be open since 1936 by the same family. The neat thing about it that I love is not only is it clean as a whistle, especially for an old school place, but it is also, I'm talking about the Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia, it is authentically decorated in vintage style. And what I mean by that is they didn't just go out. It's not just a plain motel that somebody went online and bought a bunch of vintage looking furniture. Now, trust me, I know there's a place for those places, and they do get a bit of my heart. But when you see a place that is got these wonderful vintage lamps and chairs and artwork and things, and they're vintage because they bought them when they were new and they took care of them for all these years, I just love when you see that kind of, what do I want to say, like unself-conscious, like, yeah, we bought this back in the day and we took care of it and it still works, so we use it. They didn't say, oh, this is outmoded, and then they did a really bad 80s revival or something like that. But so when you go to the Cool Wink, you get that like authentic old school experience because the place is authentic and old school. As I mentioned, it's clean as a whistle, family owned and operated, looks really cool. If you're into Instagramming, this is like an Instagrammer's heaven because there's so many things. Even like the bathroom decor is so adorable. Wood paneling, just a really great spot. So as I said, if for some reason you're having a hard time tuning in today because the weather on the East Coast is a little bit wacky, we're having some crazy winds and stuff here at the Hacienda, but that's what you get when you're doing live stuff. But the Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia. Anything else I want to tell you about that? There's some stuff to do in Romney. It's kind of a quiet little town, but you're right outside of the downtown. One of the fun things to do that we did is literally right across the street, not duck pin and not candle pin, but they do have a bowling alley across the street. So you can kind of trot yourself across the street and bowl some bowling. I think we also got some snacks there, maybe some, frozen wingdings shoved in a fryer, but I'm cool with that too. We probably maybe had a light beer or as well. So you can also just go and chill. So I just love that kind of thing where you can just go and relax at a cool vintage motel like the Cool Wink. And I'm going to stop talking about them now or else I will sound like a commercial. One other thing you can do in the Romney area too which is kind of right up in this area of West Virginia, is you can go on this thing. It's the Potomac Eagle Scenic Railroad. And what that is, and there's a couple of these in West Virginia. So if you like to check out old school trains, they have these train tracks and these excursions that you can go on in an old school train where they take you out and like in the spring, you can see everything blooming. In the fall, which is probably when you'd be able to go there, in the fall, you can go and see the foliage, all the leaves turning colors and stuff like that. And so that's kind of a fun reason. Like if you need a bigger excuse to get away than just getting away, the Potomac Eagle Scenic Railway in Romney, West Virginia. Moving along. So we've got other places, very bucolic, whatever. You may find some other things. Now here's the other thing that I was thinking about when I was doing my research, is just because I've done this research doesn't mean that there are undiscovered gems that you also may find on the road. So just because on my map there might be some counties here that there's nothing I've noted there, does not mean that things don't exist. What it means is I perhaps haven't found them, or also maybe they tend to be under a heading that is not really my jam. You know, like for example, I'll be honest with you, I probably won't be recommending a lot of sporty type places. I'm not a sports type person. If anybody knows me, they will know that I am often confusing I think I'm going to use the word wrong, like my nomenclature, but I often refer to sporting teams as bands, and instead of their uniforms, I call them their costumes. And there's one other thing I'm always doing. Oh, instead of like the game, I'm always asking about the gig. So there you go. So I probably won't be recommending a lot of sporting things because they're not what I'm from. However, just because I don't like sporty things doesn't mean that there aren't things out there like that. So do your own research as well. I just figure Retro Roadmap kind of gives you that head start that, like, you know what I mean? Just kind of fill in the blanks that you know you can go to some cool places. We're talking about West Virginia today, and the next place we're going to hit is Clarksburg, West Virginia. Now, here's a cool thing. So there is a place called the Ritzy Lunch. The Ritzy Lunch. And I love it because Ritzy and lunch are kind of like, you know, not that they cancel each other out, but a lunch is like, you know, your lunch counter. You go in, it's been there since the early 1900s, and they've got the counters on one side and the booths on the other, that kind of classic, almost diner look. And this is another place that is famous for their hot dogs, and especially like their Coney Island with that crazy rich meat sauce and onions that a lot of these old school places are famous for. And the Ritzy Lunch in Clarksburg was recommended to me. Again, I love this when people give me recommendations because they've discovered these places and they get so excited about finds that they have had that they want to share it, because I know that feeling. And that's why I'm showing up 2 days a week for the past 6 weeks or so, just to make sure that everybody knows about the cool vintage places that may be closed now, but when things improve safely, we all go out and we still support these places smartly and safely, like the Ritzy Lunch in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Now, the neat thing about the Ritzy Lunch, and one of the reasons that I love researching and sharing some of these retro road mappy places with you so much, is because when I went onto Google and I was checking on it, this is another great thing I will say about all of us kind of doing our part with these types of places, is on the internet, people will share their own photos. So you get an idea of what places look like. And when I was looking at a picture of the Ritzy Lunch, what do I see in the background or just adjacent to it? This really cool old theater. And I'm thinking, I didn't know about that, but somebody had taken a picture and it happened to be in a picture with the Ritzy Lunch. Sure enough, I discover it's the Robinson Grand Performing Arts Center. Again, it's one of these classic places that started in the early 20th century, started as a movie house, had its heyday, fell on dark times. This is a common theme of like, it was great and then it fell out of fashion and then people believed in it and loved it and rejuvenated it. So the Robinson Grand Performing Arts Center in Clarksburg is a place that they do live shows now. Again, if I don't know, here's the deal with me. I actually was surprised at how many places I was able to discover in West Virginia. So maybe these are all new to you, but if you have any clutch places that you know of in West Virginia that you want to make sure everybody knows about, please feel free to put them in the comments, because those comments, when I repost this on Facebook, when it's on Facebook, people will see the comments. When I put these on YouTube, they won't show up, but it's so important for us all to kind of, share the fun stuff that we have, because we're talking about West Virginia. And here's the deal too. So remember earlier I was talking about Blenko glass. So Blenko is one of the classic glass forms that you will learn about, or that they create in West Virginia. But West Virginia and Ohio have a huge history of kind of these products made like literally from the earth, glass and pottery. And the neat place to go find out when you are in Weston, West Virginia, is actually called the Museum of American Glass in West Virginia. And while I normally don't recommend, I don't suggest museums, because they tend to be, getting a lot of publicity themselves. This is a really awesome place because it explains why glassware is so indigenous to this area and why it has been kind of a catalyst for all sorts of development things back, kind of back in the day, all this made in America, glassware. So that's a really cool place to check out. And especially because, now let me pull up my map again, my West Virginia map. Where's my hand? So that is, that's up around this area. Now here I've got a little asterisk because here's an adorable little place that I never even heard about, and I'm so excited again to do my own visit because there is a place, I'm going to call it Helvetia, almost like Helvetica, but not quite. Helvetia, West Virginia, and that's because it is like a recreation of a Swiss village. A Swiss village in the middle of West Virginia. And they kind of celebrate their history because a lot of the people who came over to the United States back in the 1800s and early 20th century were from that neck of the woods, and they came here looking for better opportunities. Who knows? They probably worked in like a glass shop or something, or, a glass manufacturer. But they actually, built some of the buildings to look like the ones that they had back at home. And I just think that is so cool, not only because it's so unusual to see that type of architecture here in the US, but it reminds us also of how this country, and I'm not going to get on my Brillo box, but I will say this country is made from people from everywhere, So like my people came from someplace, your people came from someplace, we all came here, and we all made this wonderful, delicious American stew. So if you go to Helvetia, West Virginia, there is a Swiss village there. And I just think that's so adorable. And they do all sorts of activities. There's a restaurant. I think they do Fastnachts, which if people are familiar with the Pennsylvania Dutch, we have these donuts that they make around the beginning of Lent. So they do that. But what a neat place and unexpected to find in the middle of West Virginia, but a little Swiss village. Now, I was so excited to tell you about Charleston. So we're kind of moving along here. I was so excited to tell you about Charleston, and I'll still tell you about a few places, but there's one place that I'm bummed that's closed. And this to me reminds me of why it's so important for me to let you know about the places that are open while they're open, or, open asterisk when we're not under lockdown because of the virus. Okay. Every place that I mention was open prior to this, and God willing, will be open when things we're able to safely go to. But I was so excited to share with you the Quarrier Diner. I'm not going to sing the Patti Smythe and Scandal song, The Warrior, but I could, but I won't. But I believe it's because it's people who worked in a quarry, like a rock quarry, and there my Boston accent comes out. But there was a beautiful looking place with this great facade called the Quarrier Diner. It was made out of this vitrolite glass. And you know how I've been talking about like the Blenko glass that they made here? Well, vitrolite, or they also called a Carrera glass, is this beautiful kind of Art Deco looking, very flat colored, but very rich, gorgeous looking stuff. You might see it, now that I've told you about it, Google it, and you might see it on some vintage, storefronts. Now that I've mentioned it, but this great neon, this great Art Deco font that said Quarrier Diner looked absolutely gorgeous, sadly has closed. So I'm going on about a place that closed to remind you and to all of us to support the local places that we love while we can. And even the places that they're not local to us, they're local to somebody. But they also, they're somebody's local, but they're also our destination, because when interesting places close, then we have no place to travel to, because I'm not about to travel to some place where all I got is a Kohl's and a Panera and a Chick-fil-A. Why bother leaving my house if that's all I have to offer? But in any case, the good thing is that there are a couple of other places, and I wrote this in really small font. I apologize, so it's going to have, look at me, I'm like, oh. Charleston used to have the Quarrier Diner. It's closed, but there's some mid-century modern places worth noting, including Gorby's Music. So if you're a music person like Retro Road Husband, you saw him earlier, maybe you'll see him again. If you're a music person, you might want to go to Gorby's Music. Now, I don't know what it's like as a music store. It might have just regular music-y things, but it's got, if you look online and you Google it and you see it in Google Maps, or there's a great resource I'm going to recommend after I tell you about it. It has this awesome mid-century modern, really organic looking, almost like a combination of Flintstones and outer spacey, or not even outer space, like another planet that maybe the Flintstones were on. But it's got this great concrete not breeze block looking stuff, but a facade that they put above it that looks so cool, that is amazing that it's still there. And so that's a cool place to check out in Charlestown, West Virginia. The other place I want to recommend too is a mid-century modern shop that I haven't been to, but they do sell online, called the Purple Moose, I think it is, but I forgot it didn't print out all the way. But I'll tell you later. I will fill that into the comments after we're done here. So in any case, those are a couple places that you can check out in Charleston, West Virginia. Looking at the comments here, I wanted to make a mention. Hey, Sue G, it is lovely to see you. Doesn't the Colonial Theatre have vitrolite? Now, here's an interesting thing. Excuse me. When the Colonial Theatre, and the Colonial Theatre she was referring to is the Colonial Theatre that is here in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, where I live. And frankly, the Colonial Theatre is one of the many reasons that we moved to town, and we love it so. When the Colonial was originally built, it did not have a vitrolite front. When they did a renovation, when they modernized it in the, I think it was the 40s into 50s, and it had that classic bright yellow outside, they did have a yellow vitrolite facade. And they had that for years. But unfortunately, vitrolite was only made for a handful of years. Like, they still don't make it today. And then at one point, so the what do I want to say? The supply of that product is limited because they don't make it anymore. When the Colonial and many places, when it fell on its hard times and the vitrolite started to maybe get broken and fall off, or they wanted to modernize a bit, they bricked over the front of the Colonial, probably structurally to make it look good, but also because at a certain point, the vitrolite that looks all fresh and new in a certain era then starts to look kind of old-fashioned and outdated. Some of us love that, but other people are like, oh, it just looks old. It doesn't look good. But when they went to go revitalize the Colonial in the, I want to say the 1990s, they were unable to find enough vitrolite to put that classic facade back on. So the facade of the Colonial Theatre is meant to look like that old, wonderful, cheery yellow vitrolite, but it is now, I believe, I want to say it's porcelain enamel. I know it's, what do I want to call it? It's like, it's metal plates that have the color on them. I don't know the official, makeup of it, but and sadly, it's not vitrolite. Oh, subway stations in Toronto are vitrolite. Ooh, cool. Excellent. Yay. Jeff Cooper, thank you for popping in. I don't know if everybody look at Jeff Cooper right there in the comments. He's chiming in from England. Isn't that great? Actually, it was this time last year. It was a year ago last year that we met Jeff Cooper in Epcot when Retro Road Husband was playing with the orchestra. So it's nice to see you. And Retro Road Husband is saying hello. Speaking of Retro Road Husband, he may make another appearance at the end here because I've got a few more places to mention in West Virginia. But I will just talk about things loudly and he'll know when to tune in. But I still have some other places. So where was I? Okay. Here's the thing too. Before we get on to more places, I want to give a shout out to somebody who has been such an inspiration and motivation and a hard worker who puts us all to shame. Like, she makes me look like a slacker. It doesn't make too much to make me look like a slacker. But I want to recommend, if you're interested in the type of architecture and the buildings and the businesses that I'm talking about, go to roadsidearchitecture.com and you will discover the wonderful world of Deborah Jane Seltzer. Now, she has been a serious, hardcore, putting 300,000 miles on her little Astro van, traveling across the country back and forth and up and down for like at least the last 10 years, if not longer. She drives around with her dogs, and she is so thorough about finding buildings and finding signs and documenting them, that when I go to do my research, I always try to give her props, because it's not just me. Like, I don't invent these places. It's not like I'm finding things that other people haven't. It is a collaborative effort for everybody who loves these cool vintage places. And Deborah Jane Seltzer's website, roadsidearchitecture.com, is such a great resource that I find a lot of cool things about her. And she also keeps it up to date. So I just wanted to make sure that I shared the love where it was due and gave her a shout out, because I find out a lot of good things about her from her. And, you know, it's nice to, I have the saying, again, I didn't invent it, but a rising tide floats all boats. And you know what? All of us working together for the same thing. If I had a boat right here, it would be going like this. Okay, so enough of that. We're still in West Virginia. Yes, we talked about Blenko Glass, that you can go visit the Blenko Glass factory in Milton, West Virginia. I am so excited to go there myself, because I was looking online on their website. They have a lot of really cool things. Again, I don't need a thing, but if I go and I'm visiting, maybe I get, you know, a souvenir, something like that. Another thing that is kind of in that neck of the woods of West Virginia is the Frost Stop. So the Frost Stop is in Huntington, West Virginia. And I found out about this, and again, I give another shout out. There is a website called choppedonions.com. And I find out a lot about, like, kind of more the, not, I don't want to say greasy spoons, but a lot of the road food type places. Crap, I forgot to look in road food. But I found out that the only Frost Stop drive-in in West Virginia is in Huntington, West Virginia. Now, if you don't know what a Frost Stop is, I will recommend you can just Google it, but basically it used to be a chain, and there are very few of them left. The first one I learned about is in Louisiana, in a town, name escapes me, north of New Orleans. But they are famous for having these oversized root beer mugs is on the roof. The one down in Louisiana, actually, I think it still rotates. But this is one of the remaining, as I was talking about last week in, I guess stop saying, in the episode last week that I was doing about how some of these places, if they are old parts of what used to be a, now I'm not saying, oh man, I can't even talk. It used to be a part of a chain. It's like almost like finding a dinosaur, because it doesn't know that its little family has probably died off one by one. So it's really neat for me sometimes to see these extra chains. So there is the Frost Stop in Huntington. And that's good to know that Huntington, West Virginia is a great little town. I've got a couple of other things, and this was another neat thing. So the other one I found out was the Keith Albee Performing Center, which is a great old school theater in downtown Huntington. And then again, in my researching that and looking at it and putting my pin on the map and then looking at the map, I noticed when looking at the Google Street View that there looked like there was this fancy hotel on the other side of the street. So sure enough, there was. And then I found out there was a place called 21 at the Frederick. And 21 at the Frederick has been opened. It's a new place with that old school heart. And it's a cocktail bar and restaurant at the old Hotel Frederick. And so to me, boom, you've got a place that you can, go to visit for the weekend. You can go and get your lunch at the Frost Stop. You drive in, counter, or whatever you call it, car hop service, get your burgers and fries. Then you check into an old hotel. Then you go see a show at the Keith Albee Performing Arts Center. Maybe you get your dinner at the 21, or maybe after you go to your performance, you go have a cocktail at the 21. I mean, to me, that's awesome. And that's something you can't do every place. It's a good excuse to go and kind of spend your money where your heart is in some of these old school downtowns. Speaking of another place in a downtown in this neck of the woods of West Virginia, where are we now? Blanco. Oh yeah, we're almost at, where are we now? That's the Kentucky. This is like almost where Kentucky and Ohio meet, right? And this is the Griffith and Fell drugstore. Now, I can't remember, Craig Nye, if you're still on, if this is the place that you mentioned to me, because I know you referred me to a pharmacy that also had a, had a lunch counter. I think because there's a few of those. I was so excited that West Virginia had a bunch of these. But Griffith and Feld Drugstore in Canova, West Virginia, has been open since 1892. And again, it's one of those great places that has the drugstore stuff, but also the lunch counter. So 2 real quick places that I want to mention to you before we kind of head up in this neck of the woods, because there's still a few neat places here that I want to, hey Donna, I want to make sure you know of. But there's 2 kind of, if you happen to be on a road trip and you're looking for some road food, there are 2 drive-in places, not theaters, drive-in restaurants that I want to mention over here. One is the Sterling Drive-In. And the Sterling Drive-In is in Welch, Virginia, and that has car hop service. I learned about it from choppedonions.com. And then there's this other one in Beckley. In Beckley, West Virginia, there is a place called the King Tut. The King Tut Drive-In. Don't know why. Don't know why it's called that. But, I mean, why not stop at the King Tut and get a burger? I don't know, like a pyramid of fries or something, or a sarcophagus of fries. I have no idea. Anyhow, so that is in Beckley, West Virginia. Craig, you mentioned Patterson's in Martinsburg. Okay, cool. And that totally makes sense because that's kind of in your neck of the woods. So that's good to know that you know that this is right here. But if you want to go all the way to Huntington too, there's another cool place you can get lunch and like a, as I always talk about the, sodas at the soda fountain. So now we're going to kind of truck our way up north. And as I said, this is an unusually shaped state. So we're kind of meandering around. And you can do it any way you like. There's all sorts of routes you can take to find these things. There's this one wonderful place. So where is it? Right here. So this is Harrisville, West Virginia. I found out about this, again, through connections from actually Signs 5 and Dime here in Quakertown, PA. They mentioned that there was a place called Burdines 5 and Dime in Harrisville. And true, it's still around, thank goodness. It is a 5 and Dime shop, totally old school looking. It has been around since 1908. And I also got this recommended by some folks that I've mentioned in a few past episodes, but I always want to give, again, credit where credit is due. Anna Boutram and Joe Boutram, who do a lot of these road trips from their home base in Maryland. So they told me about Burdines, and that looks adorable. Couple of more places, and then it looks like we're going to have some extra time here because West Virginia is a small state. It's got some neat stuff in it, but I may go a little bit shy of 4 o'clock. So I'm just giving you a heads up of that because we can do a Q&A. If anybody has any place they can recommend from any state if they're interested, or we can sign off early. Just giving you that like advanced notice, okay? But we're talking about West Virginia because I am showing up every Tuesday and Thursday from 3 to 4-ish to make sure that there's something fun for you to look at and get distracted by the reality of what's going on outside of these 4 walls, your 4 walls, but also because there's so many really cool vintage places that I have on my maps, but I want to make sure that even if I haven't written the book, that you know about these things, okay? So trucking along. Parkersburg. So Parkersburg, West Virginia looks kind of neat. Now that's also one of these little places that literally it's on, I want to say it's the Ohio River, not sure. There's a river here, and then on the other side of the river is Ohio. But in Parkersburg, there is a place called the Smoot Theater. Now, again, haven't been there, but it is an old school movie house that's been around for over 100 years, started as a movie house, and now they do live theater there, which is so great to see, especially in these old downtowns that, that still survive. This is what brings us, strangers, to a downtown and we spend our money there is when there's interesting stuff going on. Kind of like how we moved to Phoenixville because of the Colonial. These are places that, end up being like magnets. So the neat thing is about the Smoot, also, just randomly, a smoot is also a unit of measure. If anybody lives in the Boston, Massachusetts, Cambridge area and have walked across the bridge from MIT to like Newbury Street, we always called it the Smoot Bridge. There's a really goofy history of that in the fact that there was somebody whose last name was Smoot. And I guess they decided that whatever his height was the unit of measure. So when you're walking across that bridge, there are little markers that tell you how many smoots. We call it Smoot Bridge. Anyhow, has nothing to do with West Virginia, but you know what? It's filling in a little bit of history you may not have known. So that's the Smoot Theater in Parkersburg. And then also, you know how I love to not stay in a chain motel and hotel if it can be helped. But it looks like there's this glorious historic hotel in downtown Parkersburg called the Blennerhassett Hotel. Awesome looking old school place to stay. So why not figure out how long it takes you to get to Parkersburg, West Virginia. Take a road trip. Go there. You know, see if there's a show happening that you even might kind of vaguely be interested in. Get a ticket to the show. You're supporting the theater. You're supporting the actors and the people who work in the theater. And then maybe you have dinner in that town. I didn't find a place to send you for dinner, but then you can discover, you know, a cool place like that. And then you can stay over at the Blennerhassett Hotel, you know? And that's how I would love to spend my many weekends once we are safely allowed to leave our homes and congregate. Ooh, good to know about the Towns Inn in Harper's Ferry. Yeah, there's some really cool old school. That's closer to the other side. I believe Harper's Ferry is around here. But thank you, Mary Beth, for mentioning that, because that's a good tip. I did not have that on my radar, but now other people do. So now we're going to go actually up to the little pointy part right here. So we were here, and then we're kind of trucking along up here. This is the little smidge here between Ohio and Pennsylvania, and Pittsburgh is right around here. But there's two places I want to mention. So normally when you're going over, when you're going from Ohio to Pittsburgh, you'll go through Wheeling. So Wheeling, West Virginia, is where the Victor Vaudeville Theater is. Suji, I know you mentioned up thread about a bluegrass jamboree, and I think there's also a jamboree that happens at that. It's the Victoria Vaudeville Theater in Wheeling, I think, also has a jamboree there. But then the last place I wanted to mention, because if you've been listening to me since the top of the hour, you will know that I was afraid that the electricity was going to go out because there was a storm here. And that's why I keep on glancing up at this giant oak tree that I'm so glad has not fallen on me yet. But anyhow, three things I wanted to have you remember about West Virginia. One being the Cool Wink Motel in Romney, West Virginia, which is over here. Oop, over here. Then we talked about Blanco Glass, which is down here. Well, now we're way up here in this little smidgy area here in Newell, West Virginia. Newell, West Virginia is where Fiestaware is made. And I really feel goofy that I don't have a piece of it, but I wonder if Retro Road Husband was around. He could get me a dish and I could show you what Fiestaware was.
Fiestaware dish, you say?
Yeah, you know, just any old thing. Could be a thing. So it's made right here in Newell, West Virginia. Made in the USA. It's been around since 1936. And as soon as I show it to you, you will recognize it. Oh, thank you. Ooh, this is a fancy bowl. Oh, actually, it's probably going to be invisible because it's the same color as the see, I like certain colors. But anyhow, so this is Fiestaware. There's a little thing. This is a new piece. Actually, I did get this when we were at the Fiestaware, what do you call it? The Fiestaware factory. And, yeah, there we go. It's like a little hat. Oh, okay. Here's a smaller one. Thank you. Thank you. So anyhow, Fiestaware. So you notice it's got the bright colors. It's got these concentric rings here. It's also got the little stamp on the back. And I have loved this stuff since forever. It's just so gosh darn cheery. And as you can tell by looking at the Hacienda living room, I am a fan not only of color, but of certain colors. I have certain colors that I like, and orange and green are one of them, are two of them. So the fun thing about going to Newell, West Virginia is not only do they make the Fiestaware there, but they have a Fiestaware factory where they make it, but they also have a factory store where you can buy it. Now, it's a little bit cleaned up since we used to go there before. To me, anytime we were in that neck of the woods, which wasn't often, but I always said it was a good excuse to go there. And you could actually almost dig through the seconds, you know, the ones that are not nice enough to be sold at the department stores. You know, maybe they got like a flaw on it or something. You could dig through and find some stuff really cheap. The other neat thing that I wish they would do something about, and I actually did write to them about this, was when you pull up to the factory, you will see off to the side a giant fenced-in area that looks like it's filled with little mosaic pieces. And it is, because what it is when they have the dishes that don't work out, they've been glazed, you know, they've got all these bright colors and stuff like that, they smash them and they like probably run over them with a truck, and then there's a whole pile of these things. And I thought, oh my gosh, all they need to do is just get a giant rock tumbler, put those little things in them, and you could make put them in your garden, or you could make tables with them or something like that. So I said, hey, this looks to me like a resource. So I emailed them and I said, gave them my ideas, and they were like, yeah, no, they're too sharp. You know, I would literally go there and buy a bucket of them just to have them around my house. They say they are using them with, they are partnering with some people to make like countertops with them. But anyhow, that's one of the neat things you'll see when you go to the Fiestaware factory in Newell, West Virginia. But you can also buy your dishes right there too. And the neat thing about buying dishes, oh, Mark Eichelberger, hey, and I know you're a Fiestaware guy. I know we've talked about Haywood Wakefield Furniture and Fiestaware, so you tuned in right at the good time. But Fiestaware, made in Newell, West Virginia. I've got all my little things right here, and that's right up here. So if you're ever in the Pittsburgh, Ohio, doing a truck across, I highly recommend you just stop and maybe pick yourself up a souvenir that's also practical. Jonathan, how funny. I must be talking, if it's like this, what do I want to call it? The Fiestaware vibe must be coming out, because I know certain people chiming in like the Fiestaware. As a quick aside, if you're a Fiestaware geek, they also, back in the day in the 30s and 40s, they made a Harlequin wear that you could only get at Woolworths, that also came in cheery colors. And I love that too. But Wheeling, West Virginia. So yeah, I'm talking about West Virginia. I might have a special guest closing us out, but I want it before we close out from this episode. I want to give you a question. So as I mentioned, I'm doing all the states. I show up every Tuesday and Thursday from 3 to 4, and I'm bound and determined to cover every single state, to give everybody something to distract themselves and to get excited to go hit the road and support the right, good, awesome, cool vintage places when we're able to do so. But here's the deal. So we're in West Virginia here. So we've already done Virginia, we've done Maryland, we've done Pennsylvania. Well, we've got Ohio here, we've got Kentucky here, and then technically right down here, we've got North Carolina. So I don't know next week what 2 states I'm going to do. Okay? So what I thought I would do is, on the Retro Roadmap Facebook page, I'm going to put a, what do you call that? Like a poll, you know, like where, hey, vote for the state. So I want to give you all a heads up that I'm going to do that to determine what 2 states, and they need to be adjacent. I'm not going to do California and stuff until I get there. But adjacent to here, what states I will cover next week. And then when we do discover that, start thinking about your favorite places that you've been, or, you know, cool vintage places, mom and pop shops, anything like that you want to let people know about. Okay? The rich man's Melmac. That's true. I also have a Melmac collection in Boontonware. I wonder if I can't remember. Anyhow, yeah, I do like the vintage Melmac too. In any case, maybe it's around time for us to say goodbye to West Virginia and say thank you, Retro Road Mappers, for timing in, because, I don't know, well, it sounds like it's time for us to go. So, adios until the next time.
Sing along. Almost heaven, West Virginia. I need to see that. Blue Ridge Mountain, Shenandoah River. You gave away my secret. Life is older, older than the tree, younger than the mountains, growing like the breeze. Country roads take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home. Country roads, all my memories I belong West Virginia, Mountain Mama, take me home down country road. Hey! Hey!
Hey, wait, what about this part?
Oh.
Hey!
I hear a voice in the morning as she called me. The radio remind me of my home far away. I drop my pick. It's okay. Country road.